Hello and welcome back to the Locked On Oilers podcast. On today's episode, the Edmonton Oilers got their man. Well, in fact, two of them. Well, actually, three of them. We will go through all three of the signings that the Edmonton Oilers have made. Plus, in fact, they've made five. So we will go through all five of them. And just what do they mean for the Edmonton Oilers? And will they make any more? We will get to that and much more in today's episode of Locked On Oilers.
You're Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to the Locked On Oilers podcast. I'm your host and former Oilers game day producer, Brett Holden, and it's free agency day, baby. Free agent frenzy, whatever you want to call it. And the Edmonton Oilers were big dogs in it. The Edmonton Oilers have signed 5 total players so far as of recording this. There might be some trickling in as we go, so I will have my phone and a couple of shows on in the background as well, just in case, so you will get the news as it comes in. But yes, the Edmonton Oilers have signed their goalie of the future, well, kind of the future, the guy who will man their crease for the next 5 years. We will get into that in just a bit. Plus, Evander Kane re-signs with the Edmonton Oilers in a very Michael Jordan-esque way. It was kind of interesting. Very late last night that came through. We will get into that in a little bit. Plus, Brett Kulak re-signed with the Edmonton Oilers. Sounded like they weren't going to. Potentially, he tested the market, but he's back with the Oilers. The Oilers also bringing in 2 AHLers or potential role players for the Oilers, so we will get into that later on today. But thank you so much for making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you find your podcast. Alrighty, let's get into, well, I would say the headline of today is the Edmonton Oilers have found their goaltender, especially the goaltender of their Stanley Cup window. It's Jack Campbell. Yeah, I know, as I have I've been very vocal in how I feel about Jack Campbell and him being the Oilers' next goaltender. But it's time to swallow pride, and let's be real here. It's not like he's the worst possible candidate for the Oilers. I mean, it's not Matt Murray. Sorry to Toronto. I was very adamant on the fact that I didn't think that Jack Campbell would be the goaltender for the Oilers of the future, and if the Oilers did sign him, that they probably wouldn't win anything. Well, now to be honest with you, I may have been a little too harsh, and I may be warming up to the idea. Jack Campbell signs a 5-year, $5 million contract per year. So that's $25 million for those who went to math class. Yes, fine, not too bad. I see a lot of people complaining about the years. Let's give it a rest, okay? Let's give it a rest. 5 years and you're complaining about 5 years? Connor McDavid's contract ends in 4 years. What do you want the Oilers to do? Sit there in the 4th year of Connor McDavid's contract year and go, oh yeah, you know what, we may make a push. We want you to come back, but we don't have a goalie in the net, so I don't know. Come on, give it a rest. What do you think is going to happen? Free agency is the day of overpayment. Look at what the Tampa Bay Lightning did for whatever reason today. Today is the day for overpayment. Look at what the Edmonton Oilers did with Zach Hyman the year before. 7 years, yes, maybe a little bit, but then he started playing and everyone seemed to forget the term of Zach Hyman's contract and went, that's a pretty good value. Let's give it a rest. Jack Campbell is coming into an Edmonton Oilers club who needs a goaltender. Not only that, he's coming into a club with a pretty decent defensive core. Brett Kulak re-signed with the Edmonton Oilers. Tyson Barrie, as of right now, is still an Edmonton Oiler. Young guys coming up into the organization like a Philip Broberg. It sounds like Slater Cuckoo may be back for the Edmonton Oilers next year as well. Marcus Niemelainen's coming up. A guy like Vincent Desharnais may have an outside chance of making it. Dmitry Samorukov. Those are a lot of names that might be pushing for an Edmonton Oilers spot with the big club. Those are all guys who are quite serviceable. So, he has a better decor than what he had in Toronto. In fact, over the last 3 years, 4 years really, he's had some pretty impressive numbers. Let's go back to his time in Los Angeles where he started to get on the radar of a lot of teams as, maybe this guy's a starting goaltender. Because he was playing on a pretty bad Los Angeles Kings team back then. They weren't very good. In that year, he was considered a very good goalie. That year, his record was 10-14-1. That was back in 2018-2019 with the Los Angeles Kings. But yet he had a 2.30 goals against average and a .928 save percentage. 928. When was the last time you saw any Oilers goaltender have something like that? Maybe Stuart Skinner in the X amount of games he played this last year? Okay, maybe it's a one-off. Well, he plays a couple of games in Los Angeles there, and then he gets traded to Toronto. In Toronto, he had, in that first year, a .915 save percentage and a 2.63 goals against that year. Yeah, yes, it's only a couple of games. But then the COVID year hit, and Jack Campbell got a full season as a starting goaltender, again behind a defensive core that really isn't that great, if you ask a lot of people, especially people from Toronto. So, that year that he became a full-time starter, his record was 17-3-2. I can count the amount of losses he had that entire year, regulation and overtime, on one hand. He also went on to have a .921 save percentage that year and a .215 goals against. He went into last season as the Vezina favorite. Now, did he win it? No. Was he close to it? I don't think so. But he still ended off last season 31 wins, 9 losses, 6 in overtime or shootout, a .264 goals against, and a .914 save percentage on a team that wasn't very good. Or excuse me, that's a misstatement there. I meant to say a defensive core that wasn't very good. You count Justin Hall and Jake Muzzin, and well, sometimes the list goes on a little bit. Jack Campbell had to really set up the fort. Yes, he was injured sometimes. Yes, he's been inconsistent. But with the load that he has had to take in Toronto, not bad. Jack Campbell played Frederik Andersen out of a spot in Toronto. He played Frederik Andersen out of Toronto, outplayed him. Frederik Andersen is still one of the top goaltenders in the league statistically and really overall. But Jack Campbell outplayed him and forced Toronto's hand to say, okay, is it going to be Jack Campbell or Frederik Andersen? Well, it was Jack Campbell. Like I said, it's a 5x5 contract for Jack Campbell. He's the 11th overall pick from 2010. Do you remember that? Yeah, let's talk about a little pedigree. 2010, he was the 11th overall pick. In fact, he's played with the Sioux Greyhounds, which seemingly is a favorite in Toronto, but he played with the Sioux Greyhounds, which was the same team as Darnell Nurse. So he's played with Darnell Nurse. In 2014, he won the Calder Cup with the Texas Stars, and Devon Shore was on that team. He played with Zach Hyman. He's mentioned a lot of other guys around the Edmonton Oilers that not only did he play with in Toronto, like Cody Ceci and Tyson Barrie, but around his career as well. Wasn't a big fan of Jack Campbell before the signing. I naturally have to warm up to him either way. I'm okay with it. There's a reason why Jack Campbell was one of the favorites or one of the top goaltenders available in free agency, and why a couple of teams kick tires on him. That's because he's a good, serviceable goaltender. Well, the Edmonton Oilers got that guy and got their guy. We shall see how him and Stuart Skinner man the fort next year. Alrighty. That came in late last night from Kevin Weeks. I don't want to talk about it. But just before that, the Edmonton Oilers announced a re-signing. Well, not really. It was Evander Kane himself sending out a kind of a Michael Jordan-esque fax saying, "I'm back." And back he is. We will get into just what Evander Kane's contract and what he brings to the Edmonton Oilers in just a second. But first, I want to tell you about our partners over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this next year's Stanley Cup Finals odds. I have a feeling that the Edmonton Oilers may have jumped over the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Calgary Flames from BetOnline's previous scores line, I should say, prop bet. I think the Edmonton Oilers and a lot of different teams are going to have a different spot in this year's BetOnline lines. And BetOnline remains your best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. Plus, BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information from live betting, esports scores, and much more. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, golf, and UFC. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Alrighty, let's continue on with Evander Kane, as last night, very late in the night, might as well just call it early this morning, unless you're on the Pacific Coast, then it was in the morning or at night. Evander Kane sending out an "I'm back" tweet with a note saying he is re-signed with the Edmonton Oilers for 4 years, $5.125 million per, a $20.5 million total for him. I mentioned that I think Claude Giroux is the perfect addition for the Edmonton Oilers and was better than Evander Kane for the Edmonton Oilers for numerous reasons. A little bit of a tumultuous guy in Evander Kane. But the thing about Evander Kane is, well, first of all, the Edmonton Oilers, I think, got him for cheaper than what they would have got Claude Giroux for. So I'll take that as a win all day. But the thing about Evander Kane is, and I mentioned this a couple days ago, that Evander Kane allows Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl to get out there and play their game. Nobody wants to deal with Evander Kane. He is one of the strongest fighters in the league when he has to. Because, yes, Evander Kane's physical presence and grittiness and ability to get into those scrums were felt by the Edmonton Oilers throughout the season, throughout the regular season, and in the playoffs. But he never registered one fight as a member of the Edmonton Oilers. A lot of people remember the classic, I guess, or the cult here. I love the photo of Ryan Hartman flipping off Evander Kane. I mean, that's the type of stuff that he does. He gets under people's skin. And if you take a look at the photo, yes, Evander Kane's gloves are dropped. But he wasn't fighting. He didn't fight. That's the thing. Yes, that's he dropped the gloves and is really a physical presence, but he doesn't have to. It's just the matter of him being on the ice really concerns the other team. Really gets you thinking, well, yes, Connor McDavid is on the ice, and so is Evander Kane. So am I going to take a run at Connor McDavid? No, because I don't really feel like getting punched in the face by a powerful left hand. Yes, not a right hand, a left hand. He is a southpaw. This past season with the Edmonton Oilers, Evander Kane had quite the season. In the regular season, 43 games played, 22 goals, 17 assists, good for 39 points. And then in the playoffs, 15 games played, 13 goals, 4 assists, 17 points. He ended the playoffs with the most amount of goals, and he didn't even play game 4, excuse me. In fact, he didn't really play for about a month before the playoffs ended. And yet he still ended tied for the lead for goals in the playoffs. In total, Evander Kane had 58 games played, 35 goals, 21 assists, 56 points. If you were to put that into an 82-game season, that is a 49.5 clip for goals, 29.6 for assists, and a 79.2 clip for points. That's your first line winger. That is a top line winger on any team in the league, and he gets to play with Connor McDavid. And he realizes that. He said in his interview today after Ken Holland, he said he willingly took less AAV because he realized that this team is in a win now mode and he wants to win. He's 30 and he hasn't won a cup yet. Connor McDavid is just as old as I am, 25, and I don't want to say that's old, but he wants to win. Leon Draisaitl, 25 as well. I mean, they're two guys who will be turning 26 soon. In fact, I flipped those around. I thought Leon was picked before or after Connor. He's 26 as well. He wants to win a cup. Tyson Barrie wants to win a cup. Darnell Nurse wants to win a cup. Cody Ceci wants to win a cup. Jack Campbell wants to win a cup. Zach Hyman wants to win a cup. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins wants to win a cup. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins realized that. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, when he signed his 8-year deal, he said, I am going to take this bump in my contract. I realize I can go and make a lot more somewhere else, but I'm going to take this blip because I realize that we are in a win now mode. Same thing with Evander Kane. He didn't have to. He tested the market and said, you know what? I think I can get more out in the market. And he probably could have. But he said, you know what? This is the best place for me to win now and win for my career. And he re-signs in Edmonton. His career high in goals is because I mentioned he was on pace for almost 50, well, 49 and a half, so basically 50. His career high in goals was 30, which was in a couple years ago. I thought I wrote it down, but I didn't, so way to go, past Brett. You let me down. But that was the same year that he put up 153 penalty minutes. Yes, I just mentioned that he doesn't have to be physical, but clearly, and be gritty and take himself off the ice, but clearly he can be productive in doing so. Evander Kane re-signs in Edmonton, 4 years, $5.125 million. I want to know what you think. I want to know if you think that's the right move, if the Edmonton Oilers should have went with somebody else. I mean, you saw David Perron go for two years to Detroit as well. Nazem Kadri's still out there. I'm not saying the Oilers could have got Kadri. I'm just saying, what do you think? Claude Giroux as well went to Ottawa. What do you think? Who do you think the Edmonton Oilers could have signed as well for that spot? Again, I said I liked Evander Kane or Claude Giroux over Evander Kane, but I'll take this any day. Any day. Let's move on to the defense, as the Edmonton Oilers made a signing defensively as well, and one that made all of Oil Country take a collective sigh of relief. As I did on the live for the NHL free agency. We had a little bit of a hangout on the Locked On NHL group there, and as soon as that news came through, I just went, because the Oilers needed that. We will get into Brett Kulak's signing and then contract in a little bit, plus the other two that the Edmonton Oilers did bring in for free agency so far. But first, this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it is now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts your car needs. Why endure often seemingly intimidating questioning like, is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And sit there and wait while the person behind the counter picks the parts that only their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to Rock Auto in your pocket and in your home right now. Why choose to spend 50, 30, as I messed up those two numbers back and forth, 30, 50, and 100%, up to 100% more than you would at Rock Auto? That same Honda Odyssey fuel pump, it's currently sitting at $316 at the local chain store. On Rock Auto, or excuse me, $353. At Rock Auto, it sits there at $216. I made it look like you were getting even less of a deal than you actually are. You're getting more of a deal with Rock Auto on that fuel pump. Save time and money with Rock Auto. Plus, Rock Auto has been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Head to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts they have available for your car or truck. Right locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know who sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Alrighty, let's move into the final major signing of the day for the Edmonton Oilers, as Brett Kulak put a little bit of fear in the Edmonton Oilers' hearts and the Edmonton oil country's hearts, really, when he said he was going to test the market yesterday. It wasn't a very long test, as Brett Kulak re-signed with the Edmonton Oilers, 4 years, $2.75 million per year. A very team-friendly contract. Honestly, for me, I think Brett Kulak could have gotten a lot more on the market, but Brett Kulak, local boy, just as soon as he stepped into Edmonton, just was a massive addition for the Edmonton Oilers. The past season, between Montreal and Edmonton, 64 games played, 5 goals, 16 assists, 21 points for him. Now, he did step in not really halfway through the year. He got traded here for at the deadline for William Legaston and a second-round pick, which turned into Lane Hudson. So, honestly, I'd take that any day. But the statistics and the lore and the love around Brett Kulak doesn't sit within the regular statistics. It sits with the advanced stats. And Brett Kulak was amongst the best, not only for the Edmonton Oilers, but sometimes in certain points in the league as well. Since joining the Edmonton Oilers, Brett Kulak was first on the Oilers in goals for per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 for a defenseman. Yes, first at 3.51 per game, which again was first. And then in all situations, which counts Connor McDavid's and Leon Draisaitl's and everybody else's points and goals on the power play, Brett Kulak sat 8th on the team in goals for per 60 minutes with 3.49. Now, that's just offensively. He's a defenseman. In all situations, a 2.7 goals against per 60 minutes, which was good for 6th. And then at 5-on-5, a 2.62 goals against per 60 minutes, good for 10th on the team. Now, Brett Kulak doesn't only play 5-on-5. He also plays shorthanded. Brett Kulak's goals against per 60 minutes shorthanded was 4.01. Best on the team. 40th best in the entire league. And that includes the players who have played just a couple of minutes here or there. That's not that, like, those numbers start to get inflated for those types of players who just happen to be on the ice for 20 minutes. That sounds like a little bit of a, oh wow, 20 minutes, not a lot of goals against. But it includes the players who are just on there for every so often. Yes, those numbers will be inflated. Brett Kulak is not that guy. Brett Kulak sitting at a 4.01 goals against per 60 minutes is massive. That is an effective defensive defenseman. Not only that, but Brett Kulak can move the puck like any other defenseman the Edmonton Oilers have. He is a great puck mover with the puck. One of, if not the best skaters for the Edmonton Oilers on the back end, along with, I almost said Duncan Keith, Darnell Nurse. And he can also chip in offensively as well. Scored one of the last goals of the Oilers season this past season against the Vancouver Canucks. 21 points for him this past season, 16 assists. He's a guy who can do it all, and he realizes that, and a lot of teams realize that. And it's exciting to have an Edmonton Oiler like that. Now, what does that mean for the Oilers' defensive core? That means, I think, it sounds like Tyson Barrie might be staying. They really like that tandem of Kulak and Barrie. Well, Kulak has really excelled next to a puck-moving defenseman because he can just sit there and play his game. He can sometimes jump in the play if he needs to, but normally he sits back and just lets the other team play that base, or other defenseman, rather play that kind of rover type position. I love this addition for the Edmonton Oilers, a re-up. He's a local boy. When he got traded to the Edmonton Oilers, he said he called his dad, who happened to be on the tractor on his parents' farm, and they cried together because they realized they got to be supportive of the Edmonton Oilers again. He was on the wrong side of the Battle of Alberta for a little bit. He was a Calgary Flame. He's a Stony Plain boy. He gets to put on that Edmonton Oilers uniform once again. And on a team that potentially after today might be a favorite for the Stanley Cup. That's exciting for anybody, but that's exciting for any Edmontonian, any Edmonton boy that grew up cheering for the Edmonton Oilers. Brett Kulak. Congratulations to him. The Edmonton Oilers also made two more quick signings as well, more depth signings. It sounded like the Edmonton Oilers wanted to bring in another veteran goaltender for Jack Campbell and Stuart Skinner. By the way, soup and stew in the crease? That's what I'm talking about. Somebody mentioned that to me. I think it was a buddy of mine, Brandon, who said soup and stew. I like it. But yes, Calvin Pickard on his way to the Edmonton Oilers. Let me read off the long list he's played for. Colorado Avalanche, started off his career there. Went off to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yes, I know, but it was only a season. The Philadelphia Flyers he played for as well. The Arizona Coyotes as well. And the Detroit Red Wings. He's mostly a career AHLer, kind of that guy who buffers between the third spot in the NHL and playing in the AHL. In his career, he has a 35, 54, and 10 record, 3.04 goals against, and a 903 save percentage. He is signed for 2 years, $762,000 per $1,000. There we go. Per year. That's the AAV there. And then the Edmonton Oilers also dipped into the depth forward spot and took a look at Greg McKegg. Yes, Greg McKegg, who's played for more teams than Calvin Pickard. He's played for Toronto, Florida, Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh, Carolina, New York, Boston and then went back to New York again. That is the Rangers twice. For last season, he did that. A career basically depth guy. He only played, off the top of my head, I believe it was 43 games in the NHL last season. So a guy who's going to be in and out of the lineup, basically like a Devon Shore type for the Edmonton Oilers. Just a guy to fill out that bottom six, really bottom three. In his career, 233 games played, 21 goals, 18 assists, 39 points. Now, the interesting thing is about Greg McKegg, though, only 65 penalty minutes for him in his entire career in 233 games played. He gets 2 years, $1.525 million over the entire contract, I believe. He has a $325 million, whoa, we're getting into soccer numbers here. $325,000 guaranteed. It'll probably be more. Well, obviously will be more. His cap hit, I believe, is sitting at around 725 off the top of my head. But yeah, that is what the Oilers have done so far. A couple things to take a watch for the Edmonton Oilers. We'll see if they take a strike at a Strome brother, potentially Dylan or Ryan. One of them may have already signed while I've been recording, so I apologize if that's outdated. But I think the Edmonton Oilers will be swinging for a guy like that. Connor Brown as well has had his name swirling around. The Edmonton Oilers realize that they still need to shore up and really fill in the blanks here for the rest of this team. They realize that they have to also re-sign, their RFAs in Ryan McLeod, Kyler Yamamoto, and potentially a Jesse Puljujarvi. We shall see. It sounds like maybe he might be staying here. I don't know. But the Edmonton Oilers do still have a couple moves to make. We shall see what they do up until then. What a day it has been already. And this offseason is just getting started. Let's have a fun offseason, Oil Country. It's already been off to a fun one. What do you think of the Oilers' move so far? Alrighty. We shall call it there. What a day it has been. And there's only more to come. I hope you stay safe. Have a wonderful day. Don't do anything I wouldn't do.